No, is the honest answer, because we've never thought it'd last more than about 3 weeks. Punk rock was, we kind of started up at a time when all the musicians playing, stadiums and all this stuff were, they were technically brilliant. A lot of them went to the Royal College of Music. People like Rick Wakeman and, the Genesis and Yes and Eric Clapton, he could play a bit as well. These were, very good musicians, and we came along and, although we were passionate and, we could knock together a good protest song, I didn't have faith that it would last more than a few weeks. I should have done, but I didn't. And that's, so the fact I'm doing it 35 years later is just remarkable, really. We must have been doing something right. But at the end of the day, I always said I'd rather see someone on stage with a guitar slung around their neck who means it, who's singing about something that's relevant, a song that says something, rather than see some buffoon up there, in a white suit, it's great to be in wherever it is, naming no names, but there's some, fabulous guitarists, who can really play, but are as bored as fuck on the stage, and you can tell, So I'd rather see a punk group who means it, to be quite honest. It just seemed like a good opportunity to do a world tour, and it's amazing that we got to 35 years, to be quite honest, because we came through days, the late 70s and early 80s. I refer to them kind of semi-affectionately as the chaos years. And anything that you could do, anything that you could do to destroy the band and also destroy your own physical health and mental health as well, we did. We were completely out of it most of the time, I have to admit. And the fact that we got to 2012, I think is a miracle.
Something worth celebrating. Just surviving this long.
That's right. It's a good question. What is punk and why did it arrive on the scene in Britain in 1976? Partly, it was the fact that there was no music really about on the scene that meant anything to a working class chap. There was all those prog rock bands playing, twiddly diddly solos, singing songs about pixies and Merlin, and then of course there'd be the obligatory 20-minute drum solo. I didn't want to see that, to be quite honest. And so you turn the TV on, and all there was little Jimmy Osmond, and Little Feat and country rock, as purveyed by Whispering Bob Harris, Emmylou Harris. It was really yawnsome stuff. So if you wanted kick-ass music, you had to do it for yourself. And we were listening to bands like the Stooges and the MC5, but we didn't have anything in Britain. So a little scene started up down Portobello Road mainly, like-minded people doing different permutations of lineups of their bands. What became the Clash and the Damned and the Pistols and the rest of them. It was an interesting time really, but we're just making music for ourselves, principally, and also there was the thing that, Britain was then, whether it is now, I don't know, possibly still a little bit, of a class-structured society, where if you didn't have a lot of qualifications from school, I certainly couldn't afford. My family couldn't send me to university. You were destined for some pretty crap jobs. In fact, talking about crap jobs, the first job I had when I left school was a toilet cleaner, So, there was that. You could be a footballer or a burglar, and or a musician. Luckily enough, punk came along at exactly the right time for me, And I took it, took the opportunity with both, whatever the expression is. Really the wrong person to ask about modern music. I haven't got a blooming clue, because I tell you why. I'm sure there's great bands around nowadays, but I object really to the studio techniques and the software used making records these days. Since the 80s, you know, but we used to have, before the 80s, we had tape.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just going to, you know, record a song, and you use 24-track tape, and it sounded marvellous. But I mean, I'm going to sound like an old fart now, but which is what, of course, I am. But so I would say that anyway. But they use this stuff now. It goes on a hard drive through this software called Pro Tools, and Pro Tools is just genius. You know, whoever created it, you know, it's just marvellous. But I mean, we've all heard it on these records by Cher and people like that. You know, the strangled cat vocal. I mean, not only can they do that kind of pitch altering thing, but they also correct the pitch of every record that's made nowadays. If the singer sings out of tune, you know, it's auto-corrected. If the guitarist plays a bum note, it's corrected. And the drums, they are quantized. That's the name of the process they use. So everything sounds like a drum machine these days.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally can't stand it. You know, they all the guitars are multi-layered. I mean, you go back to the 70s, an album like, I mean, I shouldn't be, you know, talking about these records by people like Fleetwood Mac, but Rumours is a beautifully recorded album where there's only one guitar on it. You know, he plays the chords, then he plays the solo. It's not overlayered and overdone. This is why I don't listen to records that are made these days, because
I think the talent shows are a lot to blame for that. I mean, you know, X Factor and all those kind of shows that
no, it's not.
Churn it out.
I mean, I think these karaoke talent shows, as purveyed by the likes of Simon Cowell, are an absolute misery. You know, it's doing nothing. But I have to say thank you to Simon Cowell, because it's every punk group that ever existed is back out on the road again. And the reason why is because people want to see decent, honest live music. You know,
Yeah.
without those studio techniques and effects that I was talking about earlier. But Pro Tools is and the computerized studio techniques are used on R&B, and they're used on punk, heavy metal. They're used on everything nowadays.
Yeah.
So I can only really listen to music made before the 80s.
Yeah.
The interesting times for the music business, because people don't buy records anymore, and you know, the genie's out of the box. Things have changed, and whatever the musicians say, you know, I demand that people pay money to buy my records or whatever, it's gone. I mean, I download records, you know, I mean, everyone does. It's one of those things. So instead of making a record every year nowadays, you make a new T-shirt and you sell it on the merch table, and thankfully people buy it, you know. So if you can design a shirt and get out, and you know, you're still able to stand up on a stage and twang a guitar, you've still got a reasonable career.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't make records anymore, you make new T-shirts.
So,
well, that's it. The only reason you'd sign with a record label these days, I guess, would be because they've got one of those kind of relationships with radio, and you don't get played if you put the record out yourself.
yeah.
I mean, it's easy for young bands to, you know, to get out there on the internet and stuff, and that's great. It's democratic and everything, but at the end of the day, the record companies have still got it sewn up as far as promotion's concerned.
Yeah.
So, but you know, not that I'd know anything about that, because we're hardly current these days. But you know, people say, "How did you become the first punk group to release a record and tour and all this stuff?" And it was easy, really. I mean, the Sex Pistols and Susie and the Banshees and the Clash, and they were all waiting for mega bucks deals.
Yeah.
You know, CBS and EMI and A&M and all these sort of things.
Yeah.
I mean, the Damned, we did it the DIY punk way. You know, we signed with the first label that came along and bought us a cheeseburger because we were starving. So thank you, Stiff Records. You know. No, I think it was great. It was very exciting to be at Stiff Records.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you know, they had an eye for talent. You know, I mean, the next person who used our multi-tracks, I mean, because they used to recycle the multi-track tapes.
Right.
After the art, you mix the album, and then the same tape would be used the next day for Elvis Costello's album, and then, you know, for Kirsty MacColl, and then Madness. We all used the same multi-track tape. because it's quite expensive, you know, it's worth 25 quid or something like that.
Yeah.
So you never get a remix of any of those albums. Well, I mean, it was we called it the Blah Party because, you know, I mean, I was turning on the TV at the time, seeing, you know, Tony Blair talking about his weapons of mass destruction, which was patent bollocks for anyone who was with half a brain, you know, could tell that was complete cobblers. So instead of putting a brick through the TV every time he appeared, you know, I just thought, I'll start my own party, you know, and it gave me a platform, you know, to say what I thought and stuff like that. And, you know, 2 million people went out and marched against the Iraq war, but, you know, who were ignored. But, you know, I think politics is, you know, it's kind of too important to leave to these professional politicians who are just a bunch of lying toadies anyway. And if Tony Blair hadn't been in power, whoever had been in power anyway would have done exactly the same thing. You can't, you know, when America says we're going to go to war now, we're going to kick ass, you know, in the Middle East, British prime ministers don't basically say no. But, you know, it's so optimistic when Blair got in, you know, you thought, you know. But, you know, he was Mrs. Thatcher Mark II, you know. Yeah. He's the same monetarist and privatisation and all that old nonsense. Unfortunately, all governments in Britain are conservative now, and the Labour governments are conservative. So there's, you know, it's like we're like America. The Republicans, Democrats. You know,
everybody's to the right of centre now, anyway.
I mean, there's not a lot of difference there. Yeah. I mean, you know, this is why I think, you know, people getting off their bums and demonstrating is important, because voting ain't going to change fuck all these days, unfortunately. And none of them deserve your vote either, you know, because I'm a pacifist and stuff, and I can't support anyone who's going to take the country to war. So, you know, there ain't nobody who's going to get voted in Britain who's not going to do that. Yeah, it's not, you know, the people, you know, the young people in Spain who are unemployed, you know, they never created this nonsense, you know, and it's really sad, really, because a whole generation of youngsters not going to be able to work and stuff, and the bankers are still paying themselves those big bonuses. There's something wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
I think they should. You know, I think punk rock musicians should have huge bonuses. What about that for an idea? I mean, you know, we fought in the punk wars in '76. You know, we had the tabloids whipping up this furore against like anyone who walked down the road with a leather jacket with studs on or a Mohican or whatever. You know, we fought in the punk wars for the likes of Green Day to come along and clean up and make megabucks. You know, I think we deserve medals, or at least a wheelbarrow full of money. You know, I think it's one of those times when Britain was, you know, despite what anyone thinks, you know, it's not a time to. 77's not a thing to brush under the carpet and be ashamed of. Yeah. I think the likes of Johnny Rotten, Joe Strummer, and the Damned and the Stranglers and stuff. I mean, we were doing stuff not for Britain, but we put Britain at the forefront of this kind of music revolution, which like shook things up all over the world, you know. And I think, you know, we should get played more on the radio, and, you know, I think they should invite me to Buckingham Palace and give me a medal. I deserve it, you know. I mean, a Green Day are like making all this cash, and what's that all about, you know? I mean, you know, they come off stage and shake hands with their accountants.